Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. We hope you are safe and coping with the situation. I'm Ilyas Nicholas, the Cleantech specialist at Berytech, and I'll be your host for today. As you all know, we're facing major issues in the cleantech sector and we need to start acting upon. We need to create a supportive community of experts, partners, NGOs, public and private sectors to help and support startups and entrepreneurs working in the cleantech sector to help them answer not only local, but also regional and international needs in this sector. The Cleantech Learning Series are organized by Berytech under the Clean Energy Program, which is funded by the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Lebanon. The Clean Energy Accelerator aims at supporting ideas and startups working on solutions to the challenges that exist in the cleantech sector. So the team will have to tackle challenges in transportation, energy, water, waste, or agriculture. Through this program, Berytech is offering the selected startups the resources, knowledge, support, and funding necessary to scale and grow. You can check additional information and eligibility criteria on Berytech's website, berytech.org. You can go to Programs section and select Clean Energy. The deadline to apply for the first batch of the Clean Energy Accelerator is beginning of June. So if you think you have an innovative solution in the cleantech sector, I urge you to check the website and submit your application. The Cleantech Technology Learning Series continues to happen every Tuesday on Zoom, having every week different guest speakers discussing the challenges and opportunities in the cleantech sector, specifically in waste management, water, wastewater management, and energy. At the end of the webinar, we always open the door for Q&A, and this will happen on Slido. We will be sharing the link on the chat window, and you can click on it and write down your questions. I would like to thank our guest speakers for the webinar today. We will be hosting with us Rani Al Achkar and Aya Issa. Our first speaker for today is Rani Al Achkar. Rani is the Director of Engineering and Planning at Lebanese Center of Energy Conservation, Lcec. Lcec is the Lebanon's national energy agency hosted by the Ministry of Energy and Water. He's a member of Lcec since 2009. He started as UNDP officer and then as a founding member of Lcec. Rani is responsible for the registration of the first Lebanese Clean Development Mechanism projects in Lebanon related to the National Labs Replacement Program. He was also involved in the installation of the first solar water heaters testing facility at the Industrial Research Institute. He was leading the implementation of the Med Desire project financed by the European Neighborhood Partnership Instrument Cross-Border Cooperation Initiative. He was also coordinating the execution of the Beirut River Solar Snake 1 megawatt grid-connected solar farm and the 1 megawatt grid-connected solar farm in the Lebanon oil installations in Zahran. Rani is currently responsible for the installation of 10 grid-connected solar plants in 10 public buildings. He's member of the committee responsible for the negotiation of power purchase agreements related to the first wind farms by the private sector and leading on a first bid for solar farms by the private sector in Lebanon. Rani, thank you again for joining us today. It is our pleasure to have you here. I will leave you now to lead on your presentation. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you, Ilyas. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So, good afternoon. I will be talking about the challenges for clean technologies in the energy sector in Lebanon, and I will be initiating the discussion about the opportunities as well. Starting with the policy framework, in 2009, the government of Lebanon set a target of 12% renewable energy by 2020. This target, and due to the ongoing challenges that I will be presenting, will be reached hopefully by 2021 or 2022. In September 2018, A new target was set, a target of 30% renewable energy share in the electricity demand by 2030. Both targets, it is important to note that these both targets were confirmed, are being confirmed in the Generation Master Plan that is being prepared by the World Bank and EDF, which includes a large contribution for renewable energy. They are also confirmed in the IRENA Energy Outlook for Lebanon, which was prepared last year and which hopefully will be published online soon. In the meantime, the LCEC is currently preparing the National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Action Plans for Lebanon for the years 2021 and 2025. It is important also here to note that these action plans are a continuation of the previous ones that were developed in 2016 and also before that in 2011. So the clarity in this national commitment, in addition to the buildup of efforts, generated great interest in the clean energy technologies in Lebanon, specifically interest from financial institutions, from investors, from developers, suppliers, installers, consultants, international organizations, as well as public entities. The country's pipeline of large-scale renewable energy projects by the private sector includes 3 signed power purchase agreements for wind, 12 solar photovoltaic plants in the negotiation phase, 4 wind projects in the request for proposals phase, 6 solar PV plus battery storage projects in the tendering phase, and a feasibility study for concentrated solar power. Several initiatives are also promoting small-scale photovoltaic, small-scale PV, also solar water heating applications, also concentrated solar heat applications and heat pump applications in both the private sector and the public sector. These are either national initiatives through direct investment by the private sector or the public sector, or they are supported by EU programs, EU projects, UN organizations, foreign ministries, foreign embassies, and other entities. So same for energy efficiency. There is huge interest in building envelope improvement, information and communication technologies, efficient lighting, efficient appliances, cogeneration, motor controls, efficient heating, efficient cooling, etc. Among a lot of other technologies. A lot of initiatives currently are also trying to promote the ESCO business model and the energy performance contracting as well. However, the interest is there, but the sector is faced with great and imminent challenges that are even threatening its existence. Starting from the global challenges due to COVID-19, a lot of countries are facing a high share of renewable energy generation due to the low demand, and the renewable energy, solar and wind by nature, are intermittent. So this is greatly affecting grid stability, and it is pushing some of these countries to curtail renewable energy, such as what happened in Jordan. Also, supply chains are disrupted, mainly due to the lockdowns in China, which is the main provider of clean energy technologies, and this is affecting the delivery of projects worldwide. Also, companies worldwide are less prone to invest, to put money in the sector at this stage in anticipation for a possible global recession. But in Lebanon, the challenges are more important. In addition to these, we have national challenges due to the financial situation. So the country's default on Eurobonds is or affects the bankability of our large-scale projects that are in the pipeline. Money generated in Lebanon cannot be easily converted to US dollars or transferred abroad, which also affects the bankability of large-scale projects. And it also affects the viability of small-scale ones, which is mainly due to the case of, in this case, to the inability to purchase equipment and clean technologies from abroad. And adding to that, we have the lack of liquidity in the financial sector and the inability to finance projects. We also have the usual challenges that we normally face in Lebanon, which are mainly the grid resiliency and the weak infrastructure, the insufficiency of our electricity supply and the daily power cuts, and the reliance on private generation, our subsidized electricity tariffs, and in addition to our legal and administrative challenges. So all this is threatening even the existence of the clean technologies subsector in Lebanon. It is threatening the job market and also the existence of the companies that have been working in the field. But we are all invited to switch these challenges to opportunities, to think and work together on finding concrete solutions with fast results, innovative ideas, and creative business models. Especially that clean technologies, in addition to their environmental benefit, they result in savings on fuel imports. They reduce the transfer of foreign currency abroad. They result in an increased energy security and self-sufficiency, especially now that we are promoting more industrial, agricultural, and commercial activities. Also, clean energy technologies are rapidly deployable, especially at the small scale, and they are easily financeable with lower risk, especially when we are talking about small scale applications. Finally, LCEC is engaging in an open discussion with all actors in the sector, with the Ministry of Energy and Water, with the international community, with the international lenders. In this regard, we have each week 2 or 3 calls with the World Bank, with the IBARDI, EIB, AFD, and others. We are reaching out all the time to companies, to professionals in the field, as well as to our Future Energy Leaders program, through surveys, webinars, and calls to hear the market's concerns and ideas. And it is also important for us to have innovative solutions from motivated entrepreneurs, such as those targeted in this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rani, for this great intervention. I'm sure the audience has lots of questions, and we'll be taking them at the end of the session. Please make sure that you're adding your questions on Slido. So we're copying and posting the link on the chat window of the webinar. So please make sure that you go to this link and post your questions over there. Now let's move to our next speaker for today, Aya Issa. Aya is a board member and group projects coordinator at IPT. She's working with the different departments on new initiatives that help develop the business. Aya is also a member of Itech, the IPT Energy Center, and previous to that, Aya worked as a fixed income sales analyst at JP Morgan in Singapore for 2 years as part of the global investor sales team. Aya graduated from the New York University's Stern School of Business with a double major in finance and political science. Aya, thank you for joining us today. I will leave you now to lead on your presentation. Please feel free to share your screen.
Hello, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Just give me 1 sec to get sorted. Hopefully it should be all good. You can see.
Yeah, all good.
Great. So thanks for having me and thanks for the introduction. What I wanted to start with off is introducing Itech, which will be a good first quick introduction. So originally, sorry, just getting set up. Great. So Itech was originally established as the CSR arm of IPT. You know, as corporate citizens, we believe that we have a role to play in supporting social and economic development in Lebanon. So we focused on energy conservation and efficiency, on reducing pollution from the use of energy, and on promoting cleaner and renewable energy solutions. So our goals and what we were doing was actually met through several collaborations and agreements with local and international organizations, whether it's NGOs, UN agencies, schools, universities, and governments. So since Itech's inception in 2013, Itech has had multiple projects, conventions, studies. I just want to highlight very few of them, namely launching with Itech and with the UNDP's support, the pilot plant for the production of biodiesel from waste cooking oil. We also recently built the first sustainable gas station in Lebanon and the Middle East, as well as the Energy Awareness Awards, where we partnered with the UNDP to recognize businesses, youth, startups, entrepreneurs, as well as academia for significant contributions to energy sustainability in Lebanon in whatever sector they were working in. We actually found great initiatives and they're very well documented on our website. So please do feel free to head there and see all of these initiatives, as well as all of the activities that Itech has worked on throughout its years. So I wanted to mention some of these activities that we worked on at Itech to show our commitment to our cause through picking basically the right collaborations that can help us achieve the challenges and the goals that we're looking at. But we're actually here to talk about the challenges and the opportunities of the sector. So let's get into that. And here I want to actually say, Rani, thanks for your segment earlier. I think at some point we're going to be touching on pretty much the same points, which actually means we're, it reaffirms the importance of, recognizing these issues that we all see as common and that need to be addressed. So let's get into it. So very quickly, our horizons in the energy and the transport sector suddenly took a turn, and not only on Lebanon's level, for sure, but more recently it happened globally. So I wanted to take some time to address these new challenges and the opportunities of our sector. So today, following the coronavirus pandemic, we're facing the biggest setback of what's called the energy transition. Actually, according to some studies by the IEA, the Atlantic Council, among others, they saw that this corona-induced global economic downturn is going to cause carbon dioxide emissions to drop this year, which is going to be the first time since the economic crisis of 2008-2009. With actually one projection predicting an overall annual decline of around 1.2%. So, when we first hear this is a great thing, this is very positive, but it's coming at a cost and it needs to be addressed. So, of course, we're in front of a new landscape. There's lower oil prices that are driven by demand disruptions. There are supply gluts that are caused by, geopolitics mainly. And of course, the eventual global slowdown and the recessions that have started, and they're expected to stay for a while. So this means we have unprecedented challenges that we're facing today. Just to name a few, we're talking about supply chain disruptions, less access to government incentives, when it comes to the energy sector and specifically when it comes to energy and clean energy, clean alternative solutions. We're talking about weaker global investments, specifically that reducing emissions might not be on the top of the list anymore in the short term, and an eventual shift in priorities. So governments, as well as societies, individuals, corporations, are going to be working towards an economic recovery with much less of a focus on a clean transition that was finally underway. So that's where, globally at least, there's a responsibility for governments not to lose sight of climate change. This usually is this would happen through the allocation to this cause in the stimulus package. But this brings me to my second point, and a bit of a reality check, which actually reminds us that we're in Lebanon facing an economic and social unrest way before the pandemic crisis hit. So our government probably has other pressing reforms to pass, and perhaps on first view, the clean energy transition might not be a priority today. But this is where we can also look at it differently, because maybe today more than ever, just like you mentioned, Rani, earlier, there's a very clear need for cleaner energy, more efficient use of energy, and of course it's environmental, but maybe not so much environmental, more than it is an economic need today. With social and economic crisis worsening in Lebanon, we really need to reduce our import levels. And as you can see in this chart, it shows that our energy bill is actually one of our largest import bills so far. It ranges between $4 to $6 billion a year outflow. So there's definitely a role that needs to be played there. Which also brings me into our second sector and segment that we're looking at today, which is transportation. So adding on to the challenges in this transportation sector, these past 2 months or 3 months, we've seen a dramatic reduction in traffic congestion, in air pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions. And this has affected shared mobility, active transport, deliveries, among others. So this is a time where we need to rethink the new reality that the pandemic has actually imposed on us and on our mobility. And that's going to be in an effort to shape what's going to emerge after this period. This graph actually in front of you, I thought, shows a very good job in breaking it down. So basically, avoid, shift, improve. And that's a good starting point to categorize what we can do with the different modes of transportations that are affected. I want to also add, bring it back to Lebanon and add an extra layer to this in a very tangible challenge, which is the negative role of the distribution channels that make food access in Lebanon very problematic. So today, the big topic in Lebanon has been how we need to work towards self-sufficiency in Lebanon to, again, reduce imports. In one of the studies done, they found that Lebanon imports actually over 80% of its wheat rather than using the local production. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of high costs everywhere. But one of the ones that struck me that's relevant today is the inappropriate transportation methods for produce. So even in the agricultural sector today, whether it's energy costs or transportation costs, there is a role to be played in lowering our dependency on imports and specifically improving domestic production. So this should be our priority today. Based on that, there's always a silver lining. Whenever there are multiple crises that have hit or that are going to keep hitting, as we've been seeing, there's always room for new opportunities. It's going to require us to keep thinking about energy saving solutions. We're going to have to keep working towards alternative energy sources with a specific focus on renewables, of course, because for Lebanon, those approaches will help reduce fuel imports and lessen the drainage of dollar reserves. So how do we do that? Of course, as we've touched upon earlier as well, more than ever, we need to encourage initiative, entrepreneurship, research. This is usually done through energy hubs, through mentoring from experts, support of green startups today more than ever. We need to have a clear readiness to join efforts from different sectors. And of course, new approaches that rely on tech, on new ideas, on innovations that will go hand in hand with our new reality. So we will need to advance commercial scale-ups that are already present, that we already have today, as well as working on establishing new value chains for the relevant industries today, from manufacturing, agriculture, and others. So just to, on an ending note, more importantly as well, we're going to need to reset our priorities. We're going to have to reset them based on a short and medium term versus a longer term. And we're going to have to make sure that we're invested in our country. This is very important today, I think. So we'll need some resilience to get through the short term. And while we work on creating our return plan through a reimagined reality, incorporating the reforms we want. This is a little bit inspired from the graph that you can see on the slide that was done in a report by McKinsey. And on that note, best of luck for all of us, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya, for this great presentation. And just a quick reminder for the audience, if you have any questions, please post them on Slido. Before moving to the audience Q&A, the team and I have prepared a few questions for our speakers. The first question would be for Rani. Rani, in the same context of initiating the discussion about ideas and solutions for the energy sector in Lebanon, and based on the different studies in this field, especially the one like where Lcec was part of these studies. So how do you think small-scale initiatives can play a role in tackling some of the sector's challenges?
Okay, yes. First, I talked about small scale in my presentation mainly because this is where there is more room for innovation and hopefully to inspire more the people, the possible applicants for the program. However, small scale applications have advantages on large scale in our specific case, or taking into consideration these challenges that we have. First, the investment needed for small scale application is much lower or much less than for large scale, and the access to finance may be easier. Second, the counterpart, when we are talking about small scale applications, the counterpart is mainly the private sector, so we don't have the risk of government default in this case, government default on payments in this case. Also, small-scale applications are easily deployable, or they can be rapidly deployed, because also mainly the counterpart here is the private sector, and the private sector is more reactive in this regard. And finally, small-scale applications have a lower impact on the grid, on grid stability, so we can have a larger deployment of small-scale applications with a minimal impact on the grid.
Okay, thank you for that. And the second question also for Rani. So we know that Lcec works on setting national strategies and action plans to be adopted by the Lebanese government for the greening of energy sector. What policies exist or need to exist in order to enable the entrepreneurs to excel in the clean energy sector?
Okay, in Lcec, we work on creating markets and on creating a healthy business environment, so that companies, professionals, entrepreneurs can be developed and can operate in a healthy and natural way. So we start from raising awareness and changing laws and regulations in order to create the demand. Also capacity building to create the needed knowledge, quality control. We are talking here about standards and testing to ensure quality of installations and product, and products. And we also work on reaching financial institutions to provide some financial schemes for such applications. So this has always been the way LCEC works in in promoting different technologies, in addition to pilot projects to build the experience, the needed experience.
Great. So looking forward for further collaboration, I believe, with LCEC on during our program. I believe we have lots of startups interested in tackling this specific sector. So looking forward for like a very collaborative work together. Thank you, Rani. I'll go now with Aya. So Aya, basically it's amazing to see how a leading oil and gas company is driving like many projects and research related to clean and sustainable energy. How do you think that the innovators attending our webinar today can leverage this momentum? And like, is Itech open to collaborate on new projects similar to the one that you've been engaged with?
Yeah, so I think we've gone through several challenges and difficulties that we just talked about today that are governing this sector. So I think today more than ever, there's a very big need to rely on the entrepreneurs and the new emerging leaders, of our time. We should definitely all feel very concerned, specifically in thinking outside of, and joining the conversation and thinking outside of the box, finding relevant solutions to the issues that we're facing, and eventually to help shape the new landscape that we want out of Lebanon. And to answer the second part of your question, as for Itech, we actually look forward to join the conversations on the innovations and the ideas that can help alleviate our current situation and eventually address the issues at hand in the very near future. So we have shown our commitment, and we actually use today to renew it, to join hands on these projects that would actually make that difference.
Looking forward for that as well.
Yeah.
Like I know that Itech has been around like for almost 8 years working in the energy and transportation fields. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that you have faced during your journey? And how do you think entrepreneurs can overcome this challenge and like leave an impact in Lebanon?
It's actually an interesting question you ask. So, our track records and the projects that we worked on mostly have all showed that we never really tried to go for the big magical solution that's going to resolve the big problems of the sector, but rather it was a bit more about creating that awareness in a way with the public, with our stakeholders, and all of our partners in a way that's a bit more tangible, maybe a bit more like of an academic awareness to the problems that we're facing, that the sector is facing. So we took the first step, and we were actually hoping that that awareness becomes a bit more contagious, and we see more initiatives in that field from at least other companies or organizations that are pretty much in a similar situation with us. So what happened in these 8 years or so was that it was we found a very positive impact on IPT's image and IPT's name, but we still remained a bit of an exception rather than the rule. So we were not that successful, I think, yet to reach our goal of making our way of thinking and what we're doing become the new norm. So, and sadly, I think today with everything happening and the new crisis hitting, we only expect it to get harder. So I guess that's where, it's a message for us as well as for the new entrepreneurs that are, that have a big role to play today, is that we need to keep recognizing the importance and the need for these new ideas and for finding the strategies that are going to help us adapt to a country that's actually trying very hardly to stay afloat. So, yeah.
I second you here, and thank you so much for all the the experience that you put in here with us today, and thank you also to our listeners. I believe now we can go through the audience Q&A, so please feel free to share your questions on Slido. Now I'll be sharing my screen to start going through the different questions that you have so far from the audience. So the first question, I believe, is for Rani. Did you at LCEC think about solar power tower systems? Maybe that will reduce the intermittent problem of traditional PV systems.
Okay, I mentioned in my presentation a feasibility study for concentrated solar power. So this feasibility study will hopefully one of its outcomes will be the technology that we may need to implement for concentrated solar power, whether it would be a solar power a tower system or a parabolic trough system with suitable storage. So concentrated solar power is part of the solution. However, we will need a lot of large-scale solar photovoltaic systems and a lot of wind also projects or wind farms, and these by nature are intermittent, in addition to concentrated solar as well.
Okay, and the second question from Sandy. So can you talk more about legal challenges that we're facing so we can highlight more on which kind of legal text we need to support all these ideas? I believe this is for you as well.
Yes, we have a lot of legal challenges. We need a good, robust, rigid legal framework that encourages investment in renewable energy. In this regard, we have developed a draft decentralized renewable energy law and an energy conservation law that need to be further developed or approved. The whole legal framework for the electricity sector needs also to may need to be revisited. So there are a lot of challenges that I cannot specify at this stage now.
Okay, this first question is from Andre. Can you walk us in more details through LCEC's recommendations on the opportunities? The way forward presented was somewhat vague and generic.
Yes, like Aya mentioned, we need at this stage to be collectively thinking to work together on finding solutions or on finding the opportunities in these challenges. This is why it is vague and generic. We are still in the brainstorming stage with everyone, with the different partners, and we would like to know more about what the sectors, what the professionals, what the companies, and what ideas you have in order to build them up, put them up together in proposing solutions for the sector.
Okay, another question for Rani as well. So, what is the progress on PPAs and how likely would a waste-to-energy plant in Beirut be a solution for the power shortage?
From our point of view at LCEC, we tackle mainly renewable energy sources of renewable energy, such as wind and solar, and to a certain extent hydro. So we do not tackle the waste to energy sector. However, as for the progress of the PPAs, or large scale renewable energy projects, I mentioned them in my presentation. We have 3 signed power purchase agreements for wind that are in the latest stages before financial closure. So we hope that macroeconomic situation in Lebanon will improve or will show some positive signs in order for these to progress. And the other projects are either in the evaluation phase or in the negotiation phase or in the tendering phase, as I presented in my presentation.
Okay, and what concrete reforms to the legal and regulatory framework are required to sustain the energy transition?
So
for you as well, Rani.
Yes, this is similar to the question that that was asked before, there's a lot of actions that need to be done in the legal and the regulatory context. I mentioned the decentralized renewable energy law. I mentioned the energy conservation law. Also, there is on the regulatory aspect, we have been developing a decree for a solar ordinance or solar obligation that obliges new buildings to have a certain share of solar water heating or heat pumps, depending on the availability of space. However, like I said before, the legal context in Lebanon needs a lot of reforms and that I cannot specify at this stage.
Thank you, Rani, for that. And one more question for you. So, if you can explain the challenges of importing and manufacturing locally PV panels and other technologies, since this will help several sectors.
Okay, I can say that there are a lot of manufacturers of solar water heaters in Lebanon. However, to create a manufacturing facility for solar PV, we will need large-scale projects that which is not possible in Lebanon at this stage. So whenever you have projects in the scale of 4 or 5 gigawatts, you can start talking about local manufacturing of solar PV. However, the structure, some parts of the plants could be done locally.
Another question for you, Rani. So why don't we rely on DC installation instead of AC? Like it's 30% more efficient.
DC application. DC has its specific applications. So if we are talking about a fast deployment and an imminent solution, we need to talk about AC, because all loads are AC at this stage. So DC has specific applications, and it is DC systems are installed where needed, but for the mass applications, it will need to be AC.
Okay, and if Lebanon were to go through an energy transition, will it need a decentralized municipalities outlook, a centralized one like through the ministry, or a PPP?
So basically, oil prices obviously took a very, very big hit this year. Some contracts actually getting to negative levels, which is unprecedented before. So in that sense, of course, they're very low, but they're slowly gonna pick up again eventually. Maybe not as much as maybe not very quickly, but we do expect them to remain at the lower end of the spectrum for the next year. That means that yes, it might actually be better to it might actually be better or more economical maybe in the very short term to focus on importing. But again, we need to, and it's going to be more economical, it's going to be less costly than renewable energy solutions. But we need to think a bit in the long term, where again in Lebanon, our problem is we have a dollar drainage, a drainage of our dollar reserves. So in our case, maybe it might work for a few months, for a year, for two, but over that, we actually need to be self-sufficient somehow, and we do have the resources. And also, it's very notable to say that we've had a lot of projects that are starting up in terms of renewable energy in Lebanon that are underway, that could be scaled up even more, and that could have the proper implementation, whether it's regulatory and a legal framework that we were talking about earlier. We need that in terms of reducing our costs. So in the bigger picture for Lebanon specifically, we do need, I think we do need that constant investment in renewable energy solutions.
Thank you, Aya, for answering Andre's question. So I'm gonna go back to the question before, which is was addressed to Rani. So So if Lebanon were to go through an energy transition, will it need, you think, like, will it need decentralized municipalities outlook, a centralized one with the ministry, or a KBP?
So, in my opinion, the energy transition in Lebanon needs both. We need to work at a centralized level. At a centralized level, I am talking about large-scale renewable energy, and at a decentralized level, we are talking medium to small-scale level, not necessarily at the municipalities level. Municipalities, facilities, whenever we have a piece of land where we can connect to the grid, we should be connecting renewable energy. So both of them are part of the energy transition for Lebanon. However, I think the question is formulated in a way that is more administrative than technical. Technically, we need decentralized and centralized large-scale renewable. However, the administrative way could be checked, which is the best administrative way. However, also in my opinion, the government or EDL will not be able to build its own large-scale facilities in the short term, mainly due to the financial situation.
Thank you, Rani, for this. Another question for you, I believe, like with the vulnerable grid and instability in power, absence of proper data acquisition, etc. So how are you going to be able to integrate 30% of renewable energy onto the grid?
Okay, like I said, it needs to be a combination of decentralized and large-scale renewable energy. Also, renewable alone is not the solution; it is part of the solution. So we need to improve our grid. We need to improve our generation capacity in parallel to our increasing of the renewable energy contribution. So it's a whole work or a whole package of efforts that needs to be done in the sector.
Okay, and another question for Aya. So would reactivating or building new refineries in Lebanon be part of the transportation solution, adding value locally and reducing import and
Okay, so just to clarify, when we talk about refineries in Lebanon, we're mostly talking about storage spaces or imports. So just to make the distinction between storage and between the production of oil and gas. So if we reactivate them in Lebanon, that means we're just importing more. And if we're rehabilitating or we're building new ones, it's going to incur a lot of fixed costs for, a lifetime or longevity of oil that's of the oil sector that's pretty much, going to start decreasing eventually. If we talk back to the energy, moving away from oil and into the renewables. Into the renewables in general. So I still think if we're about to put that, personally, I think if we're still about to put those investments down to rebuild and to promote our country, it's way more. It's much better to invest them in renewable energies in general that are going to be more long-lasting and more sustainable in general. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Aya, for your intervention. Another question I believe Rani can answer. Is there any sustainability program for building designs and ESCO in lab, similar to Dubai, for instance?
We have several initiatives currently running in order to promote ESCO business in Lebanon. We have a project by the EU called Restart that is aiming at developing the ESCO business in Lebanon in addition to energy performance contracting. Another project including Lcc as partner, which is BEEP, also aims at develop. So we have several initiatives to promote ESCOs in Lebanon. However, we don't have one full program a mandatory program that fosters the market yet.
Okay, and another question for you, Rani. What are the measures that LCEC is planning to take in order to support the private sector post-crisis, besides the usual support?
As I said, we are still in the brainstorming phase. We are engaging in discussion with everyone in order to see how we can boost the market post crisis, so that companies or private sector actors can have some the support that is needed.
Okay, and to invite IPP, you need to have a trust in the banking system, as you touched upon bankability. In such times, how can you convince developers to bid for renewable energy projects? I think we have lost Rani. Aya, do you think you can tackle this from IPT perspective? You want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, please.
No worries. So basically here, the participant is saying that to invite the IPP, you need to have a trust in the banking system, as you touched upon bankability. So at such times, how do you think we can convince developers to bid for renewable energy projects?
This is going to be very hard today, specifically with exactly the loss of trust in our banking sector. So I think this needs to come with a very comprehensive reform plan that's going to start helping developers, as well as, whether it's local or international donors, to start putting their money back into Lebanon. So it needs to be a very comprehensive plan that shows the impact, and that needs to also be part of solutions that can tackle several issues that we're facing today. So whether it's, for example, renewable energy and how it can affect the agri-tech sector that we were talking about earlier, if we can actually resolve solutions that will eventually be able to help reduce the problems that we're having, whether it's balance of payments or else in Lebanon.
Thank you, Aya. I don't know if Rani, would you like to add anything for this question? Yes. So a large part of the investment needed for IPP comes from foreign international finance institutions. So it's foreign money, and a part of it is local or is in investment. Is from investors. The idea is not trust in the banking system, it's more trust in the government being able to pay, to make payments to the IPPs when payments are due. So, this is why I talked about bankability. However, renewable energy payments are small in comparison with other payments that the government has to do. And whenever we have a reform plan that is or positive signs regarding any reform plans, I think that IPPs will easily be financed.
Okay, and what do you think about producing energy from the waves? The sea waves.
We have proven, we have good solar and wind resources which are proven, which we can benefit from them using proven technologies. Waves may need some further development worldwide before we can start investing in them.
What about e-mobility and EVCs? What about transport taxi boats? What about the entire utilities infrastructure rehab policies? Do you think, I don't know if LCEC maybe is not too much involved on the transportation side, I believe. So Aya, were there like any discussions on like similar projects or ideas?
Not yet. We've heard a lot about the taxi boats and those modes of transport, but nothing has been concretely put into action just yet. So again, it could be the time for that.
Great. So this is like maybe a sample of thinking outside the box to try to find like solutions to overcome the current situations that we're living in. To what extent Itech is working under Kyoto Protocol guidelines, and is it benefiting from reduction emission certificates, REC?
Actually, we mostly follow the goals and guidelines of the Ministry of Energy and Water, and as well as the ones imposed by Lcc as well. So we've been working closely a lot with Lcc in general and some of the projects that we've been doing. And one of them was actually getting to reducing emissions and having an energy mix where renewables play at 30% by 2020. If I'm not 2030, sorry, if I'm not mistaken. So we don't actually benefit from any reduction of emission certificates. That was not implemented in Lebanon yet.
Okay.
I don't know, Rani, if you have anything to add to this in general, in terms of.
Yes, Kyoto Protocol ended in 2012, and at the time there was a crash in the CER, Certified Emission Reduction market. So the price went very down, and then the voluntary market started to pick up a little. However, the carbon market needs to have more value in order. I think it needs to have more value in order for companies such as Itech to start looking for opportunities to benefit from it, but not at this stage. Not at this stage.
Okay, and to what extent the competitive political environment in Lebanon play a role in the success of such new innovation in this sector, based on like any previous experience?
Regarding renewable energy has always been part of a political consensus, more or less, in Lebanon. There has never been any political competition or any political thing related to renewable energy. The sector has been more or less technical, and which allowed it to develop slowly but at a steady state.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear that, I believe. Another question for both Rani and Aya. So, is Lcc or Itech involved in developing a clean mobility industry or infrastructure? I would go with ladies first. So, Aya, if you want to.
We're not necessarily very involved, but it's more about promoting awareness on how we can reduce our emissions while being mobile. This is one of the first campaigns that we actually try to work on and that we try to implement. But no big project. It's more of awareness campaigns that we're doing in that in there. Rani, if you guys are doing something else.
Also, a lot of, for example, a lot of companies working in the sector have already started importing charging station, for example. So in order to promote some combination between solar and charging station for EVs. For Lcec, we tried to develop a concept note for a car sharing program once, and I think this could be also a good opportunity, could have good opportunities in Lebanon as well. However, the transportation sector and the mobility sector is not on our top priority at LCC.
I guess just one little thing to this. One thing we did try to do very recently is to start adding EV chargers on some of our stations and at our main headquarters. I think, again, it's still very slim. Hybrid cars or say electric cars are still not very widespread in Lebanon, but we have the real estate for it. So once that is actually put on track, you know, given IPT actually has the real estate all up across Lebanon and with a wide variety of stations, that's a project that we actually were looking at implementing slowly and eventually coupled with how the sector evolved.
Okay, another question for Aya. So you were saying earlier that you are not satisfied about the results of the awareness campaigns. So have you thought of long-term systematic change programs?
So I guess at first, you know, we were in a different time for the past 5 to 8 years. Everything was expanding. We were kind of putting our feet a bit everywhere to, you know, try to reach as many topics as we can. So maybe this is why our awareness campaigns were focused under our areas, but they were a bit everywhere in different sectors with different you know, players in Lebanon. So this could be something that we're going to look at today in terms of like how can we focus on one thing and actually implement and try to change that awareness, because I think today people are listening, people today need to have that awareness. So maybe that would be one of the projects that we'd be working on and focusing on today.
Okay, thank you, Aya. Another question, what are some no-cost or low-cost solutions, and what are the challenges their implementation is facing? I believe maybe Rani can add his experience here.
Yes, a lot of no-cost, low-cost solutions can be implemented. Here we are talking about energy efficiency. Mainly awareness is key, but also so that people turn off unnecessary equipment when these equipment are not used, but also some control and information technologies. So information technologies, communication technologies, control technologies, automatic building management systems, automatic controls. All these have low costs, but they manage to operate buildings, processes in the most efficient ways.
Thank you, Rani. I believe this is related to a previous question. So thank you for answering the grid part. So before the grid is stable, the percentage of RE, the 30%, are simply thoughts. First step is grid rehabilitation. That was my point. So
these are not thoughts, and the first step is not grid rehabilitations. Grid rehabilitation things can go in parallel. Some studies say that you can connect up to 20% renewable energy to a grid without any rehabilitation. Also, we are talking about a combination between large-scale PV and large-scale renewable energy and small-scale renewable energy applications or behind the meter applications. It is we don't need to do one before the other. We need to go in parallel. Renewable energy is being deployed in Lebanon. The renewable energy share in Lebanon is increasing. However, to have a high share and a stable grid, we may need to do some things in parallel at the infrastructure level.
Yeah. And the last is like more like a thank you message. So thank you, Elias, Rani, and Aya. God bless you. Keep it up. Cheers from Dubai, and hope Lebanon will flourish one day. Thank you, thank you, and thank you for all our listeners today, and thank you again for Rani and Aya for joining us. I hope that everyone has enjoyed this session and find it beneficial. Before closing, please keep in mind that the deadline to apply for the first batch of the Clean Energy Accelerator is beginning of June. So if you think you have an innovative solution in the clean tech sector, I urge you to check the website and submit your application. Also, when signing out, it will be great if you can answer a small survey so that we can keep on improving the webinars. Stay tuned for the content of the next Tuesday webinar and hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.